As Shibuya Kaho once said, manga is a wonderful amalgamation of pictures and words. With that being said, I'm going to rate every manga that I finished in 2023. This won't include any ongoing or dropped series, and I'll do a quick fire summary for each, so going in the order that I read them, rating them from 1 to 10, with half decimal points being allowed. But now the stage is set, let's get straight into it. Embrace your size by own body positivity. This manga is a great way to spread the word about body positivity, but I found the structure was a little bit difficult to follow. 5 out of 10. Count Over. This one-shot left me wanting to know more about the characters in the world, and I found it absolutely fantastic. So it's a 9 out of 10. Josie, the Tiger and the Fish. It was a beautiful story showcasing blossoming relationships and chasing dreams. 8.5 out of 10. Cat Massage Therapy. Cute cats being masseuses, you can't really go wrong. 8.5 out of 10. Mythical Creature Dr. Totaku. This was an interesting concept, but was a very generic high school student finds out they're a monster story. 5.5 out of 10. Among Us. This one shot was surprisingly funny and brought back a lot of good memories of playing the game during the pandemic lockdown, so I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. Next is February, starting with Kinniku Jorai. This was a fantastic manga, but I found that the only thing holding it back was the character Koishikawa, but if you're up for a manga with slapstick humor and great wrestling moves, then I'd recommend it. 9 out of 10. Gal to Cube. I didn't care much for the high school romance, but I was definitely fascinated with the maths behind solving a Rubik's Cube, so I'd give this 6.5. Nicola traveling around the demon's world. This was a very neat adventure story with a unique art style, but I found it to be a little one note, but I did enjoy the overall sense of discovery, so I'd recommend giving it a go. 7 out of 10. One Arm Amy. This was a very wholesome tale about a father and daughter relationship that didn't overstay its welcome, but I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. Love After World Domination. I would happily read more adventures of all the characters, except Hyuka. She infuriated me heavily. But I'm sad to know that this story is over. I wish there was more. This is great. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Moving on to March with A Silent Voice. I understood this was a sentimental manga, but I didn't find myself gelling with any of the characters. Though I would be interested in watching the movie to see if it changes my mind. So I'd give this a 6 out of 10. I Am a Cat Barista. This was a perfect collection of weary stories that were soothfully solved by a cat barista. I'd give this an 8 out of 10. 80s Video Trip. Breathtaking both in story and art, and unraveled an interesting tale on how old relationship habits can impact future generations. 8.5 out of 10. Skipping to May because April was nice and quiet. Starting with This Gorilla Will Die in One Day. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I just can't believe this was written by the same author as Tokyo Ghoul and Trojan X. But I'd still get a 7 out of 10. Ogre Gunsmoke. This was basically John Wick, but he's a female succubus. I found that it was okay. The action was cool, but that was pretty much it. So I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. Giant Spider and Me, a post-apocalyptic tale. This was a super sweet story about building friendships through the power of cooking. I'd happily give this 8.5 out of 10. The Mermaid Princess's Guilty Meal. I was a little bit disappointed with the execution, and I felt like it could have gone a lot darker and statistic with the theming and the story, but I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Lawless Kid. It's a solid one-shot with a solid story. I enjoyed the realistic sibling bond between the characters. It kind of reminded me a bit of me and my siblings, but not in a post-apocalyptic world where everyone is crying, more of just the wholesome side. So I'd give it 8 out of 10. Can You Fall in Love with a Skeleton? I feel like this would have really benefited from being longer than one chapter just to flesh out the emotional growth between each characters. So I'd give it 6.5 out of 10. Mr. Paperbag is in Love. This was absolutely marvelous and reminded me of my own relationship in so many heartwarming ways. As Cherish from Bake Off would say, I love it, love it, love it. 9.5 out of 10. Batsu Girl. This is a typical delinquent girl likes boy high school romance story, and that's it. Nothing else. 4.5 out of 10. From Star Strings. This was a beautiful depiction of lonely curiosity, drawn by the same artist from Made in Abyss. I'd give this 7 out of 10. Miss Kazuyu's favourite is small. This really proves the point that animals sometimes make way better companions than humans. I'd give it 7.5 out of 10. Telework Yorobanashi. This is a fantastic love story about a couple blossoming in the most unconventional of ways. It was 20 chapters long, so it was super digestible. 8.5 out of 10. Saguri-chan Exploration Party. I guess the intention was supposed to be wholesome, but Saguri did not need to be drawn in an ecchi way. She is a child, so I'm going to give this 5.5 out of 10. Kiss Shitai Otoku. I wasn't expecting the sudden dark tone shift nearing the end of the one-shot, but it was okay. 6.5 out of 10. Kishibe no Yume. I really enjoyed the whole getting spooky in the world of art. I found it to be almost like a tame version of a Junji Ito story, which was pretty cool. So 7.5 out of 10. Dear My Living Dead. I loved the artwork, but the story felt super concentrated and rushed, so I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Cross Epoch. This was a great crossover, so if you like Dragon Ball or you like One Piece, this is just great. I did find that some of the panels were a little bit too busy with the artwork, but there are a lot of characters, so I totally understand. 7 out of 10. Children can't choose their parents. It wasn't bad, nor was it good. It was interesting. 5 out of 10. The Many Flavors of Kumika. I was way more invested in the other characters' lives, especially Area, but the fact that the story followed one of the least interesting characters kind of brought it down for me, so I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. The Antique Cat Shop. The cats were way more interesting than the humans in this story, but the aesthetic really reminded me of some charity shops that you would see in the high streets of London. 6 out of 10. Claudine. This was a beautiful French story about love and tragedy. It was a smidge too dramatic for me, but I can see why people would enjoy it, so I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Succubus and Thereafter. Who would have thought a story about a succubus nearly had me in tears? This was a great story with an unexpected emotional twist. I'd give it 9 out of 10. Nandi Nandasan. This was a great art style, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around the story premise, so I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Let's Go Karaoke. I didn't quite understand the relationship between the two main characters, so I couldn't quite connect with the story, so I'd give it a 5.5 out of 10. Jurassic Academy. Dinosaurs as anime high school students? Yes please, I'd happily give that 8.5 out of 10. Ginka and Gluna. It should have been fleshed out a lot more, which was a shame because the art was fantastic and there was incredible magical fighting scenes. If the length was triple digits, I could definitely see it competing up against stuff like Mashal and Demon Slayer, but because it's so short, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Jacko the Galactic Patrolman. This was a story about a character in the Dragon Ball Z universe that no one needed nor wanted, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Gatinko Battle. This was just a speedrun of the Chronicles of Pulau, but in a one-shot format, so I'm going to put it as a 7 out of 10 and leave it as it is. The mutant wants to kiss his human girlfriend. The art did not need to go that hard for a plot that finished so abruptly. I found myself staring at a few of the panels because they looked so great, but it was kind of disappointing how it just sort of dipped at the end. I'd give it 6.5 out of 10. Monotone Blue. Honestly, better than Beastars. 8.5 out of 10. Rory Dragon, but the one shot. This was a great coming of age story that just made me want to be part dragon, and I was sad that I'm not, so 8.5 out of 10. The weakest contestant in all space and time. I love the concept of this, but I found that it finished just as the story was about to take off, so 6.5 out of 10. Her Special Seat. This really hones in on finding that one special place in the world that provides complete comfort, but I would have loved to have seen the characters fleshed out just a smidge more, so I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Crazy Food Truck. I was hoping this would be more about the food truck, but I found that the character Arisa really ruined the whole thing for me. If it was just about a post-apocalyptic food truck and making recipes in that world, I would have loved this a lot more, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. The Wise Beasts of the Wizarding Wisdoms. This was just a bunch of horny fairies attending a wizard school. And that's it, 6.5 out of 10. To Strip the Flesh. I found that the first story within this collection was the best one, and if it was just that, I would have rated it higher, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Poppy's Wish. As this was drawn by the same artist as Promised Neverland, there was a very striking art style. I found the story to be super sweet, and you could definitely tell that it was inspired by Pinocchio. 8 out of 10. Midnight Waltz. I loved the whimsical fantasy vibe, but I couldn't quite figure out the relationship between the two protagonists. Were they lovers, families, friends, students? I couldn't understand it, but maybe it's for someone else. So I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Bibliomania. This is Alice in Wonderland, but on steroids. This was absolutely fantastic. Though I did feel that I needed more time for my brain to breathe between each panel, so I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. Dragon Ball. That time I got reincarnated as Yamcha. Similar to the Jacko story mentioned earlier, I'm happy about having more Dragon Ball in my life, but it didn't blow me away, even in the slightest. 5.5 out of 10. Iguana Girl. This was a surprisingly deep one-shot about overcoming motherly rejection and the difficulties of a parent-child relationship. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. She Becomes a Tree. This was a sweet story about two people who fall in love with each other for what they are both on the inside and the outside. Plus, it also features epic tree powers, so who doesn't want that? 8.5 out of 10. Kamen Rider. I understand that this sets the foundation of action drama, but as I've been exposed to so much modern manga and I'm only a recent manga reader, I found the plot to be kind of boring and hard to get through. But that's just my personal opinion, and I can understand how people would really enjoy the story. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 10. Mashle, a solid and amusing fusion between One Punch Man and Harry Potter. 8 out of 10. A Chinese fantasy, The Dragon King's Daughter. This was a very pretty collection overall, but similar to Strip the Flesh, the first story was the strongest, so I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. My Father is a Unicorn. This was a strange and fun story, however the father figure's arrival felt very intrusive on the current family dynamic. 7 out of 10. That Dragon Exchange student stands out more than me. This was a wholesome story about multi-species delinquents building friendships. 8 out of 10. Sounds of Magic. The art style was visually innovative, but personally I found the story to be quite uninteresting, so 6.5 out of 10. The story of Kuhai, who flirts with me as a self-proclaimed girlfriend. I'm not usually a fan of high school romances, but this one was really sweet and the artwork slapped quite a lot, so I'd give it a solid 8. Girlfriend who absolutely doesn't want to take a bath versus boyfriend who absolutely wants her to take a bath. This is spectacular and it had me smiling from ear to ear. I cannot recommend this manga enough. Anyone who reads this will have a fantastic time, so 10 out of 10. My Dead Husband Won't Stop Bugging Me. An emotional acceptance story about grieving over the death of a loved one. And who'd have thought cockroaches could be so romantic? 8.5 out of 10. Kintoki by Akira Toriyama. Solid plot point and a solid world, but it didn't knock my socks off, so 7 out of 10. Puppy Love. One of the character backstories felt a little unnecessary, but overall it was a super sweet story, so 8 out of 10. Ogiha. The only redeeming part of this manga was Ogiha herself. The other characters just felt off, so 6 out of 10. Skyclaw. This just felt like an unofficial My Hero Academia backstory, so it was okay, so 6 out of 10. Monster Tamer Girls, a calming story about high school girls taking care of genital dragons. 8 out of 10. A Story of 7 Lives. This feline-focused story nearly had me in the tears by the end of it. I'd highly recommend it, so 8.5 out of 10. Heel and Squeeze. It's fair to say this is pretty ecchi, but it was a fun read nonetheless. So 6.5 out of 10. Wake Up Please, Miss Kuzukabe. This was supposed to be a wholesome story, but I ended up feeling pretty bad for the boyfriend in this relationship by the end of the story, so 6.5 out of 10. Love Score. This was a fabulous Black Mirror-esque story about finding compatibility through dating apps. It was very interesting to see how people would cheat the system just to date someone that they would desire. 9 out of 10. She and Her Cat. This story follows Miyu and her cat Chobi. It really expands upon the idea of freedom being an isolating experience. 8 out of 10. Kimi to Piku Piku. A great one-shot about video games bringing people together from all different types of backgrounds. 7.5 out of 10. Yutakata. This explores the feeling of wanting to confess to the one you love through the lens of being a mermaid. It's pretty good. 8 out of 10. Hello World. This story felt super condensed and it would have benefited from being much longer to stretch out the plot. So with that, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Tokyo Alien Boys. A slice-of-life story about aliens looking at the world through the lens of humans. Just picture that Men in Black scene, but a lot less creepy. I did start to dislike Fuyunosuke towards the end of it, so 7 out of 10. Blue Box, but the one shot. I felt like it was a great representation of girls' sports in secondary school, while also being a sweet romance manga, so 8.5 out of 10. Monster Child. This was a gripping manhwa that I never wanted to put down, and I was so sad when it did end, so I would happily give it a 9 out of 10. Ni Ni Nina-san. This was a fantastic one-shot that hit me with such an emotional twist at the end, especially since I went into this thinking it was just about food. So much like Monster Child, this is a 9 out of 10. Our Dining Table. This really enforces the fact that food brings people together in such wonderful ways. It also proves that kids can really get in the way of romance, so 7 out of 10. Hisoka's origin story. The Tokyo Ghoul art harmonized fantastically with the twisted origin story of one of the most sly and sadistic characters of Hunter x Hunter. 8 out of 10. Moving into September with Even If Your Mouth Is Ted. This was supposed to be a romantic story, but it felt super forced between the two characters. And I was kind of looking forward to it because the main protagonist was this cool sort of Japanese folktale character. So I'd give it a 6 out of 10. You If. I wasn't expecting this kind of story looking at the front cover. I genuinely thought it was just about building computers. But by the end of it, I was really rooting for the main character. 8 out of 10. Look Back. An interesting story diving into what if scenarios. 7 out of 10. Nursery Cat Inari Teacher. This really put the nail in the coffin of me never wanting to work in a nursery and just having more of an appreciation of those who do. 6 out of 10. Neon Vampire. This had outstanding character design, but the plot was pretty okay, so 7 out of 10. I married my best friend to shut my parents up. This was an interesting insight into Japanese marriage culture, but the story didn't really grip me emotionally, so 6.5 out of 10. Junji Ito's Dog Diaries. This was just sad. I would recommend reading Junji Ito's Cat Diaries over this, but it's still an interesting read to see where he's come from. So 6 out of 10. Hell's Paradise. Brilliant but brutal. Worlds of twists and turns that contain such unique characters. I found it difficult to keep track of names sometimes, so I did skip some unneeded speech bubbles, but I'd still happily give it a 7.5. Hell's Paradise, Forest of Misfortune. This was an excellent after story that had more of a slice of life feel, while still maintaining the signature action. As it was short and sweet, I'd rank it slightly higher than Hell's Paradise, so let's give it an 8 out of 10. Turns out I didn't finish anything in October, so we're skipping to November, starting with an OG of Slam Dunk. I was grateful to experience the parallel evolution of Sakuragi as a character and the mangaka as an artist. I felt like I was part of a journey rather than reading a book. Turns out, basketball is also pretty sick, so 8.5 out of 10. Bow. This encapsulates everything that was perfect about 80s shonen manga. I felt like I had read something that belongs in a museum. Following Slam Dunk, I'd also rate this an 8.5. Just listen to the song. It was intriguing to see Fujimoto's metaphorical perspective when releasing Chainsaw Man Part 1 and 2 within a one-shot format. 7 out of 10. Hedgehog in the King's House. I really wanted to love this as it focuses on just animals, but never throughout the 31 chapters did it grab me. So I'd hit it with a 5. Gorgeous Irene. This was 2 stories within one manga. I wish it was just one story, as I would have rated it so much higher than I'm about to. I found the whole power of makeup premise to be really cool, but alas, I'll give it 6.5. Ending November with Carol and Tuesday. This was a sweet, somewhat prosaic journey following blossoming musicians. I did feel that the Mars setting was pretty unnecessary and this whole story could have easily occurred on Earth, so I'll slap it with a 7. Now we're into December, where completing manga decreases because the festivities increase. We're starting with the story of witches and cats. This is one of, if not the most wholesome coming of age story featuring witches and cats. I loved it, and it makes me want to become a witch, but I can't because I'm not 13. So I'll happily give this 7-chapter manga a solid 9. Has the Rain Stopped? This wasn't long enough to build a strong opinion on it, however I do like the idea of tree people, so I'll give it a 6. Last but not least, we have Enial and Dewila. I loved the contrast between the two main characters, and the prophetic panels were so mesmerizing, especially in NEL's panels. The contrast in a way kind of reminded me of my sister and I as well. We may be complete opposites, but somehow we find a way to get along. So my final rating of this year will be a 7.5. There you have it. There's everything that I finished in 2023. And a shout out to Ninja Mushi for his 200 manga recommendation video. It was a big inspiration for this one. If you have any manga recommendations for next year, feel free to pop them in the comments below, as well as your thoughts on any of the manga that I mentioned. With that, I shall see everyone in 2024. Happy holidays! Bye!